Hello and welcome to this special interview for Death Expo, which is being brought to you today by End of Life University. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Wyatt, and I'm so glad that you're able to join us today and listen in to this fascinating interview. I've been very excited about this interview for days. My guest today is Jamie the Psychic. She calls herself that on her radio show, and we can talk more about that. But Jamie is a physical and emotional healer and a psychic with clairvoyant and clairaudient abilities who lives in Orlando, Florida. She was born with the gift of empathy. She's able to feel and instinctively know the emotions of others. She's also a medium, and she's a healer who is able to see the physical body as a manifestation of the condition of the spirit, and when appropriate, allow divine source or God to heal through her. She sees her path as being able to minister to those in pain and to erase the effects of a lifetime of pain and uncertainty. She also writes that all are welcome here, despite religious or spiritual belief. She loves and respects all belief systems, and in the end believes we are all united in divine love. Jamie often appears on television and radio. She has her own radio show, a weekly radio show called Cosmic Caffeine Radio Show. She's the mother of 3 beautiful children, the author of the book Answers. She's also a singer-songwriter, and I learned from Facebook, she makes great cakes. And I've been a guest on her radio show twice, which is why I'm so excited to be able to interview her today. And I can tell you from my experience with Jamie that she is one of the most authentic, real, open, and loving people that I've ever met. So, Jamie, I'm so excited that we have a chance to talk today, and thanks for being here.
Oh, my gosh, me too. I'm sitting here listening to that, back in my direction. I'm thinking, totally want to meet this girl. She sounds really fun. I like hearing it through someone else's eyes.
I'm excited to get to interview you since I've been on your show twice where you got to ask me the questions. And it's really fun to be on the other side of it, to be able to fire some questions at you, but also pick your brain and learn from you what you have to teach us about.
And likewise, you have always been, the 2 times we've had you on were just life-changing episodes because your work with grief, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, has just been monumental, not only for me, but for just hundreds and hundreds of my clients. And I want to thank you, for your openness and for the 2 that you did and the way that they were spaced a year apart, as we both know, very interesting, amazing. And I actually went back and re-listened to them a couple of days ago.
I was thinking, I think there are many threads that tie you and I together. I think we both felt a lot of bonds between us and a lot of commonalities between us. And one, I just discovered from reading on Facebook that you make great cakes because I love to bake cakes. That's one of my favorite things. But the major thread that I think we both felt brought us together was the thread of grief. And it's been really interesting as I've just looked at how we came to know one another. And it turns out the first time I was on your radio show, it was 3 months after my mother had died, which you didn't know. You didn't know that. I didn't think that would be an issue on the show. I thought I was going on the show to talk about my book.
You should have known better.
I should have figured this out.
Well, and the fact that it was your birthday, too.
Yes, it was also my
now
birthday.
It's almost, and now mine is coming up. That's so weird.
Yes, that is weird. It's almost your birthday.
Good weird.
So on that particular show, I mean, I was dealing with grief over my mom's death, and you actually helped me a great deal because you transmitted a message to me from my mom that I really needed to hear, and it was one of the keys for me. It was simply the fact that you said your mom wants to apologize to you, and I probably never told you that, but I've been working on forgiveness with my mom for years of work on forgiving and letting go of things.
I knew there had to be a lot of forgiveness work going on, or even, I would almost have said, because I can remember that night very, very well, almost avoided to some degree because you didn't quite know how to. You wanted to. But I think until you felt that she was able to receive that, that was when I think you probably had a pretty big turning point. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah, it was huge for me, and it made me realize as much as, I think that we have to work on forgiveness on our own ourselves.
Sure.
And whether other people forgive us or whether other people apologize, we still have to do the work of forgiveness. But
Absolutely.
The fact that I heard an apology come from her, it instantly, all of this forgiveness work I've been working on for years, it clicked in an instant as soon as I heard that somewhere, wherever she is now, she acknowledges that things weren't exactly the way they should be, except as soon as I heard her apologize, I suddenly knew, no, everything was perfect.
I was about to jump in and say that.
Yeah,
well, and
everything
I think
was perfect.
It was absolutely perfect, and I think that's such a key element in what we're talking about today, because everybody wonders, and I think until you have had an experience where you have really lost someone that's super important to you, you do wonder, where do people go when they die? Are any of these stories true? And you're really not there, because you haven't experienced it. Once a person has that connection and it's irrefutable for them, then they're able to open up something else in their mind, and that is that this forgiveness work, let's be honest, we're human. I want to know that when I say to the person that has hurt me, it's okay, I love you, I forgive you, which, by the way, is for me, I want to know they heard me. I want to know that maybe they might even come back with a response like, you know what, I'm sorry too. And then you have this beautiful moment. Well, if someone has passed, most people feel they can't have that moment. And one of the things that I do every day is I call it cosmic AT&T, is we pick up the cosmic phone and we say, hey, Mom, what do you have to say? And like you said, there was no lead in there. She just came in with this energy of, let her know I'm so sorry. Honestly, she's not, like you said, because it was perfect, but sorry for the fact that I needed to know that there was forgiveness necessary. And that was just an amazing moment.
Yeah, it was incredible. And, it made me remember that I had a dream once of seeing my mom, which I now interpret as it was as if I was seeing her soul, because I was seeing my mom as the ideal, perfect mom that I wanted to have. I was seeing her at a younger age. She was full of light and beautiful and glowing and all-knowing and full of love. And I had a conversation with her, and she said to me, your mom hurts you because she can't do it any differently, and you are carrying pain for her that she's not able to carry, and that's part of what your life is about. And suddenly I saw all of that came back to me, that dream that I had, and this realization that my mom, my mom in her essence and her soul, which I believe in, that has persisted after the death of her body, has always seen all of it very clearly and always knew what was happening and understood it all.
And I think for people, because you and I understand that concept, I think one thing to add is that I believe, and again, like you said in the intro, I allow people their beliefs, and I never try to change someone's mind. Why on earth would I do that? It makes no difference to me. But in my belief, I believe that before we come here, how people that believe in the Bible, God and Jesus split, and part God enters human form in the form of Jesus. Well, if you kind of take that concept, and a lot of other religions actually have that same concept of the Great Spirit becoming fragmented and part us, we know before we come here that we're going to have this certain experience. And I don't think that we know everything. That's our sort of free will and our chance to experience this human experience. However, what we say to that person, and I talk about this a lot in my book, is, hey, you, and we always look up. The person who hurt us the most, in my belief system, we look up and we say, hey, to this advanced spirit, would you be willing to come and be this person that's going to cause harm to me? I need this experience, because we only grow through pain. And you guys can think about that for the next month. And there really is no time that you've truly had soul, spirit, emotional growth when it wasn't painful. And based on that, somebody has to offer us that pain path. And your mother, beautifully fulfilled that contract. So when she came to you in her higher form, which, by the way, I didn't know about that dream. It's lovely. When she came to you in her higher form, number one, she was showing you who she really is, where we come from.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was saying to you, look, she does not know. And if you think about it, I'm going to bring it back again to the Bible, just because it's a good reference. You know, Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Why? Because we are not consciously aware until we wake up that we are connected to this amazing divinity, this birthright of divinity. And it's not religious. It's just who we are. And that's, I think, what you came face to face with in such a gorgeous way.
Yes, exactly. And so it was on your radio show when I was a stammering guest.
You were not. You were amazing.
Well, I mean, I guess I did okay. I was just so overwhelmed. I felt like I wasn't sure how to respond, and so much was coming at me at once. And I was trying to remember patients I had taken care of, and that story's familiar, but do I really remember that? Or
I say, look, I've got to say this. And then one thing led, and then you had Mitchell, and then you had Evan, and you had me all kind of throwing all this info at you. So it's wonderful that it's recorded and that you can now go back and take that again and again and again and get something out of it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I went back and listened to it last night, actually. And so listening to it from after already knowing what's coming and how it will unfold, I was able to say, oh, yes, I totally remember that. I do remember that. Yes, that's all clear. It all fell in place so much better.
Beautiful.
But it still made the impression on me that the turning point, and it was a life-changing turning point, was that you just conveyed to me that my mom wanted to give me an apology. And even knowing, again, in the soul realm, there's nothing to apologize for. It was all perfect. But she was giving me an apology in the earthly realm in my lifetime for our interaction as we interacted together here on the planet. And it was like I said, it was the turning point for me for healing years worth of work. I mean, at kind of finishing and resolving years worth of work on forgiveness. So that was just so amazingly powerful.
One of the things, I went back and listened to it as well. I've actually listened to it about 4 times because of, as we'll talk about later, the Evan sort of connection.
Yeah, and going back and listening to it again now too, it's clear, since my mom died, I have felt this void because she was always the person I could call her at any time and say, oh, I did this today, and she would say, that's fantastic. Oh, that's wonderful. I could always call her and know that she would.
So that was also accurate. Interesting.
It was, yes, it was.
Wow.
And so I
got to tell you, I remember what I felt like when it wasn't even really her talking. I was just seeing the relationship, and I just felt this sense of loneliness. Like it was kind of what I feel with my situation. It's the silence. It's the deafening silence, as I call my blog and my group on Facebook, that when someone has left, even if the relationship was less than ideal, it is absolutely so silent. And that's one of the hardest parts, I think, to deal with. And so it makes more sense to me now because then immediately I feel apology. And I'm like, wait a second. These two are not adding up for me. And I remember dignity as well coming forth, that she was thanking you for giving her dignity. And we never elaborated, but I remember that being very important.
Yes, yeah, that really touched me because I took care of my mom for the last week of her life. And so just me and her 24 hours a day. And it was really beautiful and incredible.
You could write a book on that,
But yeah, it touched me that she thanked me for that because it was just this total gift of love on my part, and so I was really touched that I got that message of thank you back because she couldn't have thanked me in her condition. No. She wasn't able to thank me. I didn't need to be thanked, I wasn't asking to be thanked, but to have that acknowledgement was really
well, and
really
as a reader, I've been doing this for 18 years, and probably most of my life, actually. I will be 45 on Sunday, and sometimes I call this when I look at this situation, you know, as a reader, I get, okay, my greatest supporter is gone. Oh gosh, greatest supporter is saying I'm awfully sorry. That's opposites. And thank you for giving me my dignity. This is a very complex relationship. And a person like you, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how connected you are, when you're dealing with a complex relationship that is in some ways bipolar, and I don't mean the person, I mean the relationship, where it doesn't make sense, what the heck are you supposed to do with that? You know, and I work with this every day absolutely successfully because I'm able to comprehend why you can have all three things in one human being and why her role was to be all three things, among others, for you. You know, I turned to my son when he was 16. He's 20 now, and I looked at him, and I looked at him and I said, you know I'm supposed to mess you up, right? Like I'm not supposed to get this totally right. And he smiled, and he says, yeah, I know. And then he gets a little quiet. He looks at me and goes, do you mind if we keep that to a minimum? And I said, I will see what I can do. And, of course, the concept being is there are no perfect people. How boring would that be? And I often say this to my clients, you know, if you were a perfect person, no one would want to be around you because it is our imperfections that define us. You know, when you look at a piece of lace, it's the holes in the lace that create it, that define lace. Lace could not be lace without holes, right?
Exactly.
The beautiful part that's visual is this lovely white fluffy, you know, pattern. But what's missing or what's incomplete are the holes. And so humans are the same way. It's our imperfections that actually create our individuality and the beauty of who we really are. So I say, bring it on. I love my imperfections, and I've got some good ones.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you bring parenthood into that, because I remember when my kids were little thinking, I want so much to be a perfect parent. I want to be everything that you needed me to be. I want to do the best job I can. And then waking up one day and realizing, wait a second, there's no way I'm going to be perfect. And then I understood, like, but my flaws and my weaknesses will be exactly what my kids need. That will create the suffering that they need to grow from, and I have to accept that. I have to see the beauty in it and not beat myself up over it. I have to say, I just have to be who I am. And
that's life.
Be the best mom I can be as me.
And given the fact that I had lunch with your incredible daughter in August in L.A.,
that's right.
You did a really good job. I got to tell you, she's incredible and just such a light. And you did a great job. You know, again, you know, they don't come with instruction manuals. And I say to my three all the time, look, I didn't, and I'm willing to say, look, I didn't get that right. I thought I did. And obviously it was right for you at that moment, but right now I really want to tell you that if I had it to do over, I would do that differently. And do you know there's so much healing in the ability, because now they're able to look at their lives and say, I was kind of raised believing, oh, my mother's perfect. You know, she's perfect. And I could never be that perfect in my mind. Was she a perfect mother? No. But it was a belief that I had. And then seeing her imperfections really threw me as I got older and actually made me fearful of being a mother myself. Now I tell my kids, look, I am so imperfect and I'm going to screw this up, I assure you. But you have my word that I didn't mean to, that I love you more than anything, and that when it is brought to my attention that I have hurt you or that I've done something that isn't in your best interest somehow, I will tell you how sorry I am. And it has created a really good, I think, environment for my three. Is it perfect? No. My youngest is 15. And no, it is not perfect. But it's fantastic. See, that's it. Mm-hmm. We get a do-over. There's always a do-over. Even with your mom, there was a do-over.
Yeah, even though, I mean, it had to come after she had already died. And I was thinking of how powerful it is that you can give that kind of apology here in the moment, in this lifetime while it's happening, so your kids can be working with that and working on it as they grow and go along. You know, for me and my mom, it took until after her death before I was able to get that message from her. And yet, it's every bit as healing and every bit as powerful.
And absolutely the right timing. You didn't need it prior to that. In fact, if anything, you needed the silence for those 3 months to process your own belief about you and your own belief about her and about your role here. And it has probably, at least the way it feels to me as I access you, it feels that it has definitely propelled you forward to being able to offer that to other people. I mean, you had said to me before the interview, you know, as vulnerable as you feel comfortable being, and I smiled and said, there is no place that I won't go. I'll talk about anything. And actually, isn't it funny that the first part of the interview is actually your vulnerability? And I think it's beautiful that you're willing to go there, just as you did with us. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, because that leads us up to the next interview I did with you on the radio, in which, you know, you've had what? How many? 6 months now? 6.5 months?
Almost 8, actually.
Almost 8 months.
Let's see. November 2nd will be 8 months
of dealing with your own grief. I mean, tremendous, huge, powerful grief situation that you were in, which is ultimately why I ended up coming back to the show, because it felt like we haven't finished this conversation about grief. We need to talk some more about it, because you've been in the middle of it. And this is a time, I mean, 8 months into a grief experience, a lot of people wouldn't even be able to process it or to begin to talk about it. But you've been so open, and you've been blogging and sharing your feelings and talking about the process, that I felt like this is a really powerful time for us to share this talk about grief, because others who are grieving really need to hear it. Yeah. They really need to hear this honest conversation.
And so much of what I learned after the fact, and I know we'll talk about it, but after the fact, was from you. And you were the first pivotal moment, I would say, of healing that I had, other than obviously noticing things, you know, that he was still around, was going back and listening to that show. And then I decided, you know what, we need to do a show on grief. And what's happened since the beginning, you know, March 2nd, is that I've had hundreds of people come to me and say, I was in this terrible place for 10 years, 5 years, you know, 8 years, 20 years. I couldn't move past the grief. And in a matter of days, of seeing what I was putting openly and vulnerably, I said that wrong, out there, really moved them quickly through it, and they were able to return to happiness. And a lot of that is because I internalized the work that you do. And I know we'll talk about that, I'm sure, after. But I'm sure you want to fill everybody in on what we're talking about.
Yes. So it was March 2nd of this year that you lost your twin flame, best friend, radio co-host, probably, you know, a person so important and special for you in your life. And I don't know if you want to talk about it. Or...
Absolutely. You know, I will preface by saying it isn't that I have bravado. It isn't that, you know, that I haven't dealt with it. A lot of people have asked me, you know, are you really okay? And I say, no, I'm not at all okay. But yes, I'm okay. And part of that is I was told immediately, and we're talking the day of, you will be very open with your grief. Now, I'm a person that does not do that. I'm a Libra Scorpio, for anyone that follows that stuff. My birthday is Sunday, and Evan's would be Monday. So we were born one day apart. Not people that are overly good with vulnerability. It definitely is a life path struggle for me, and this has been the biggest. And so what happened, I met Evan actually on Plenty of Fish, which is a dating website, nearly 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in November. And I should have run screaming in terror the moment we met, because there were so many reasons that he was not the right person for me. But I felt this overwhelming compulsion to have him in my life. And they used to call him, Evan was a special effects makeup artist for Universal Studios here in Orlando. And for 15 years, one of the longer running jobs he had was probably about eight years. He did all of the monsters in the Beetlejuice show, which is just so cool. And friends with all these great makeup artists around the world, and such a talented human being. So I was definitely drawn to his creativity. But they had a phrase for him at Universal. They used to call him Angry Evan. And I could totally attest that that's true, because when I met him, oh my goodness, he was from New Jersey, beautiful blue eyes, salt and pepper hair, gorgeous man, as you well know, and just beautiful. And he worked out 5 days a week, 2 hours a day for 15 years. The man was in perfect shape. He was 46 years old, and for probably 8 months prior to him crossing over or passing, he started telling me that he was leaving. And I didn't really believe it, I don't think. We were talking about this before we started the interview. It's very hard to grasp that, because when someone is so vital to your life, you don't think, oh, they're really going to leave. And the reason that I would tell you that Evan at that point in my life was the most important person, so not just important, Karen, actually the most important person, because he was the one person on this planet that when he existed and I knew that he was here, I didn't feel lonely. Because I always feel like the only elephant at the zoo, because my soul is lonely, because I don't connect like other people do. But he was the most important person to me and to my heart. And that day, it dawned beautifully. I'd been on a cruise. I came home. First thing I did was drive to see him. And that whole morning was magical. When he opened the door, he almost glowed. It was stunning. And 3 hours later, at 3:33 p.m., he actually crossed over. I was in the room, so you know what that feels like. We were at the ER. He had a coronary embolism, so there was no suffering. He did not suffer. I want to go like that, I got to tell you. I'm sure you've seen it before. There's just nothing. It's not dramatic. It really is very peaceful in the sense that the person just is very unaware of what's going on. For me, however, it began a journey. Now, one of the things that he said to me repeatedly over the 8 months before he died, and isn't it interesting that we're at 8 months since he died right now? I find that correlation important. He said, Jamie, I have to tell you, I've seen something, and I need to tell you. And I said, all right. And he said, I used to call him Baby Psychic. I'm like, all right, Baby Psychic, what did you see? And he said, you're going to lose someone really important to you. And I remember just feeling this clutching feeling in my heart. And he said, and you need to understand something. It's going to be the worst experience of your life. And he said, you're going to go through a very, very dark tunnel, and no one can walk with you. You have to walk it by yourself. He's like, however, I'm going to be right beside you every step of the way. I should have known right then. And I think I did on some subconscious level, because I said, as long as it isn't you. Probably 6 times in 8 months. And he looked at me every time and said, I can't promise you that. And then as time drew closer and closer and closer, he started saying, if anything ever happened to me, would you do this? Or would you make sure of this? Or would you give this to this person? I mean, I had exact instructions. So yeah, that tunnel was definitely accurate. And I would like to believe that I am now, today actually, with you, I actually am being told that tunnel, that there's light now, and it's not a train. It's a good train if it's a train.
Because the tunnel, no matter what you know about it, you're just in the middle of blackness, and you can't find your way out of it sometimes for months and months, and can't see what's on the other side, even though everything you've learned tells you there will be a light. When you don't see the light, it's so hard every day.
Well, and people ask me a lot, being a gifted medium, what is it like to experience this? And one of the things that I said to Evan about a week before he died, we loved to go to Waffle House on Sunday mornings, and I sat across from him, and he had a hard time saying, I think you're beautiful, or I think that looks great on you, or I love those jeans on you. He just wasn't like that. And I would always be the person that wanted to hear it. So I looked across the table, and we had this little joke between us, and this was probably 3 or 4 weeks before he passed, I'm sorry. And I said, you know what? The next time you think it, do you think it? He goes, I think it all the time. And I go, all right, you just don't say it. He goes, right. I'm uncomfortable with that. I go, okay. So the next time you think it, just look at me and say 7. Just say the number 7, and I'll know you like something about how I look today. or you're attracted to something. And he smiles and he looks up and, his little grin, and he says, no, I'll just say 10. And I smiled and said, I see what you did there. And it was just this cute little joke. He never did say it, by the way. So a week before he passed, he said once again, if anything happened to me, and I stopped him and I said, okay, you know what? Enough. And I go, you've said this enough. You have my attention. So let's do this. As good a medium as I am, I'm going to doubt it's you. There's no way that someone is going to be able, it's going to be all messed up. If I ever lost you, I'm going to be a mess. So I want you to send me the number 10. So it's very interesting to me, and he has, by the way, repeatedly, and it's very interesting to me that as a medium myself, I do hear him in my head, and that it's almost annoying because here I am the morning after, and everybody knows the morning after is the worst. The first morning, and you wake up and you forget, and then you remember, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's still true. And I remember him coming and saying, listen up, sister, very New Jersey, it's how he was. You do not have time to just sit back and lick your wounds. You have got to get out of that bed, and you have got to write this, and you need to answer this person. And I remember looking up and saying, are you kidding me right now? Seriously? And I was kind of upset about it, and he, Evan and the boys all said the same thing. It is through your vulnerability and your honesty, and we know we're asking you for a lot, but please be willing to be this to the world. And if you do, so many people will be touched and healed. And you need to be this person. You said you would be this person. And I made up my mind right then that no matter how hard it was, I was going to be honest. And from my blog and from some of my posts, there's some vulnerability in there. And I go back now and read it, and I have this beautiful reference point of what I did feel like versus what I feel like today. Every day, it's as hard as it was the day he left. It isn't easier, but it's the different. And it's because of you, because you said you must allow grief to change you. Do you know how many times that sentence echoed through my mind at moments when I just couldn't deal? Coming home, 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to drown my sorrows by partying with friends, bawling my eyes out, yelling at him, how could you do this? Why? Just gut-wrenching, horrible pain. I'd hear, you must allow grief to change you. And I would stop and I would say, how is this changing me? And then I would answer that question, and it was different each time. So huge, just huge work, Karen.
Yeah, it's interesting that came up in our conversation that first time. And listening to myself say that because I talked about trying to recover from my grief after my dad committed suicide, which took me years to get over that grief, but I recognized later it's because I wouldn't let it change me that I couldn't get over it. I wasn't recovering from it because I just wanted to be the same person I was before he died, and I was trying to figure out how to get back there and make everything be exactly as it was. And
so true.
It was the day I recognized, wait a minute, that'll never happen, and it's not meant to happen. This whole thing was meant to change me and to catalyze my growth and to push me in ways I haven't been pushed before.
And when you say that, I can remember sitting on the third or fourth day, and this is so early on, and I don't know how I was even able to be here, but I remember going outside, and I'd picked up smoking again. I'm not smoking now, but I quit for 90 days, actually, the day he died. And I was smoking a cigarette, and I was talking to the boys, and I was saying, because the thing I wanted was to go back and sit on his couch. I kept watching the videos. Because all I wanted was to go back there. It wasn't even going back to me. For me, it was going back to what I knew, the way he smelled. I still wear his deodorant because it smells like lemons. I still wear his shirts and his boxers to bed. I have pictures, and sometimes I take them down, and then I put them back up. And I remember that day, I sat on the couch, and I had already listened to our show again, which is quite amazing that the boys had brought me back to listening to that, and I was doing it because I wanted to hear Evan's voice. And yours was one of the first ones I heard after he passed, which was, of course, apropos. And I remember saying to myself in my conscious mind, okay, listen up. What you believe right now is going to be completely upside down. You're going to be in this denial thing. You're not going to see things clearly. So here's what we're going to do. And I remember saying this to myself. Karen says you must allow grief to change you. And if I do this, and I knew it was true, I'm going to come out of this tunnel. And I want to get out of this tunnel as fast as I can. That's how I'm thinking at the time. So I said, you have permission. You, Jamie, you have permission to feel anything you feel. Anything. You can feel good. You can feel sad. You can feel like having, a crazy one-night stand with a stranger. If that's what you feel, you have permission to deal any way you deal. What you don't have permission to do is to stay in the same place. And so that was my moment. And I said, all right, what do I feel right now? And I remember thinking, I believe that I will see him with my eyes. And I know that was a form of denial. But at the same time, with what I do for a living, that wouldn't be that unusual, especially in dream state or some of hypnosis. It really wouldn't. In fact, there are days I think I wouldn't be surprised if he just walked up to me, because I do live in a very magical, beautiful world. But I said to myself, that may happen, Jamie. And I remember this logic. I said, that may happen one day. It's not happening right now in this moment. So I was teaching myself, not only am I letting grief change me, but I'm letting myself live in the moment more than I ever had. And I have to tell you that when I look back over the 8 months and the blessings, and oh my gosh, they're you can't even count them. One of the things that I probably appreciate the most about this experience, and there are a lot of things, is the fact that I have learned how to truly live in this moment. Because when you're in that much pain, you can't do anything but. You can breathe in and you can breathe out. You can't even think about 15 minutes from now. That's too far in the future. It's too painful. I think anyone that believed that they would stay in that pain for the rest of their lives they'd cease to exist. They would stop being here. And I didn't have that option. I wasn't going to give myself that option. So I chose to say, all right, this moment right now is how I feel. And do you know, if I gave anyone advice on dealing with grief, I would tell you, first of all, all of what you teach. But and you may even teach this, but to stay in the moment. Don't look into the future. Try not to spend too much time in the past, but stay in this moment. And that's okay if you're looking through photo albums and crying. It's okay if you're listening to the saddest song anyone ever wrote and crying your eyes out. That's okay too. Stay in the moment.
Because it's here and now. It's what you're experiencing right now that matters.
It's the life. It's the life force. It says, I am real. I remember, I don't know if you did this, but I remember pinching myself at times and saying, am I even real? Is this really happening? Or is this just some kind of bad dream and I'm going to wake up? And when you live in the moment, you know that it's real, because it's all it's creating. I'm creating in this moment what's about to happen in the next and the next and the next. And so stay in the moment. Eckhart Tolle's work, The Power of Now, is just an incredible book for this.
Well, I love that, at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about the fact that everything that we have learned spiritually, that any one of us ever learned spiritually or on a soul level, comes through pain.
Absolutely.
And loss, it's just one of the universal forms of pain that comes to us, because we will all lose the people we love at one time or another. It's part of what we are going to experience in this lifetime. And while it sucks and it's horrible, it can be the worst thing that you ever have to deal with in your life. And yet at the same time, I heard myself say in the middle of grieving over my mom, I said, curiously, I feel elated at the same time. Like I'm suffering.
I can elaborate.
And
that's a huge statement
ahead.
You just made. Well, because it was on my mind actually earlier today, and it's actually, I think, in one of my blogs. I remember maybe 5 weeks in, I'm coming to, I'm realizing I have to continue going, all of that. I remember one day writing something down. I was answering a fan on Facebook, or I was doing something, and I felt this incredible beauty. And I'm going to use the word beauty because internally, what I see loss/grief as is fire. It felt like a fire had come through my body. And one of the ways I describe it is, imagine that you are one of those metal people that somebody put freezing stuff on and then hit you with a hammer. And you just blow up into all these shiny, splintery pieces. And those pieces are laying all over the ground, and they're all you, the old you. And what I envisioned was picking them up one at a time because I couldn't have done it all at once. It was too much. One at a time throughout this summer and throughout this early fall, I have picked those pieces up. And what I was finding was that the girl I was, or the woman that I was March 1st and the beginning of March 2nd, was incomplete. She was more insecure. She was angrier. She was actually more tired, more impatient. The person that I was and became in April and May and June and now became this incredible, it was beauty because I could see love all around me. I was loving and I was being loved by thousands of people. And I remember saying, I think on our show, Karen, I'm pretty sure, I don't know how people that are completely alone handle this kind of grief because I was inundated with love. And I found within my grief the most beautiful butterfly. It's the only word that I can use. Out of a cocoon of pain, out of a tunnel, I found a person who can handle anything. Bring it on. Because let me tell you something, I'm not afraid of death because I now know, if I didn't know it before, and I did, but I now know that this is simply the vessel. And we still exist so beautifully after this process of being human is complete. And, you know, that brings me, are you thinking, go ahead, because they're telling me to say something, but I want to wait and see what you have to say first.
Well,
so
I
something we
was
talked about
say,
before the interview.
I've had that same feeling of, and I don't know if I can say that I'm on the other side of grief. It seems like I'm not sure that the grief actually, you know, once you've lost someone, like the loss never goes away, and the emptiness of that person being gone never goes away. But I am, as you described, I feel so much stronger and so much more powerful. And there's no doubt in my mind that I will handle whatever comes from here on out, whatever there is, whatever comes to me.
Yep.
I will be able to handle it, and I know that for sure now.
It's incredible. You know, I've worked with police. I've worked with parents of, you know, murdered children. I do that stuff very quietly, but I've worked in so many situations with the most horrific, you know, losses. And I've often counseled afterward, you know, with my work, and I often say to someone, you know, isn't it interesting that, and I'm going to bring it back to, let's take a person who has not experienced this, because some people, I lived in fear. I don't know if you did, but before I had this major loss, I lived in fear that this would happen and that I would crumble. I always thought that. And I told Evan that. I said, I think if I lost you or one of my kids, or I would just cease to be. I would crawl into a little ball and I would just stop. And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, oh, no, you won't. And he said, you'll find out what you're made of. And I've had clients that are going through something fairly minor. Let's say a massage therapist who has carpal tunnel and can no longer be a massage therapist. And that's a pretty major deal for someone. They're obviously being put into a different direction, but they're resisting it. And I always say to them, you know, pain is relative. So you look into the eyes of a mother who has just witnessed her child hit by a car or a hit and run or abducted and murdered, and I have done that. You look into those eyes and you see pain. You see something bigger than even humanity and humankind can truly grasp. And suddenly you could take that same mother and you could put her in the hospital that very night and say, you know what, your right toe, your big toe is gangrenous and we're going to have to cut it off. And you know what she would say to you? Go for it. Whatever. Well, you know, you're gonna lose your house to foreclosure. And she's going to smile and say, really? Do you actually think that that house matters to me? Because what pain does is it purifies and it shows you what is really, really true and what is really, really important. And honestly, it makes me emotional because I would not go back. I honestly would not go back and change anything. I would go through everything I went through to be sitting on my bed, looking out my beautiful window at the Florida sunshine, thinking about this experience because it has enriched my life. And I'll tell you one thing, the loneliness that I've experienced, when I meet the person that's for me, and I know one thing, no one will ever appreciate their partner more than me. No one.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just
I know.
processing what you were saying because about pain purifying us, because I wrote that in my book too. That's one of the beautiful things about working with people who know they are dying in hospice is that they lose all their pretenses. There are no facades. Everyone is so authentic and so real because the ego gets stripped away and all of their kind of false desires and the things they were striving for and clinging to fall away, and you just see what's pure and real and honest about that person, and that's what makes it so incredibly beautiful to have this privilege to work with people when they're experiencing that at the end of life.
You know, that is the most perfect thing you just said for what I actually was hoping to share today, and it's because it's so new to me. You know, you were watching that happen. I recently have actually experienced it. And I don't even begin to tell you that I understand it all the way, but what I've discovered over the last week and a half to 2 weeks, so we're talking very recently, was this feeling of none of this really matters, which, you know, lots of people have reached that point, sort of zen, as you would say. You know, does it really matter what happens a year from now, or does this matter, or does that person, you know, do I need to be mad in traffic? You know, those are pretty normal things to reach. But something happened to me about 2 weeks ago, and it was a feeling of, and please understand what I'm saying by this, because I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. It was the same feeling as if I was being prepared to leave. And I remember saying, my boys were saying, you know, get everything in order, file your taxes, you know, do all these things. And I didn't question it. I went, okay, and I just started taking care of business. And I found myself saying, hey, I love you. I really love you. Mitchell and I rarely say that to each other because we don't have to, number one, and because he gets all weird if I get, you know, lovey-dovey on him. And the last 2 weeks, we've said it to each other like 6 times, and we've had this discussion. And it's so interesting because I was driving home. He says, I need to see you, because he's leaving for Dallas tomorrow for a convention. And Mitchell is my co-host, by the way, on my radio show now, and was, of course, when Evan passed. And I knew he wanted to see me because there was always a chance that he may not see me again. And we sat in Starbucks, and I looked at him, and I said, I don't know what this is, Mitchell, but what I will tell you is I feel like one of those people that's in one of those movies where they're not really there, and all the people can't see them, but they can see all the people. I feel like I'm nothing, but I feel like I'm everything. And it's the weirdest experience of my life. It's almost like I stopped being Jamie and the boundaries that are me, and I started becoming everything around me. And I've heard this said before. It's not new, but to experience it is very interesting. And when I got home, I was texting with my good friend Dr. Mark, who I also had this conversation with, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It is what they refer to as ego death. When you stop seeing you and you start noticing that every one of us is every part of everyone else, that tree outside my window is just as important as I am, or my dog, or my friends, or that flower, then everything makes sense. And I know that some of you are going to hear this, and you're going to think, wow, you know, that chick's out there. Yeah, it's true. But what I will tell you is that one day these words will make sense. And so remember that you heard them. And the other thing I want to say about that is, those of you that listen to this particular interview, and I don't know if I'm the only, you know, psychic, medium, energy person that you're interviewing, but one thing I can tell you is that every day of my life, someone says to me, hey, forgive me if I don't believe. I'm a skeptic. And I smile, and I say, first of all, good for you. And they always step back and say, whoa, what? I go, well, first of all, what on earth are you supposed to believe in? I mean, like, don't you believe something? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, well, good. And they go, yeah, but you're telling me that dead people still exist. I go, no, I'm telling you dead people still exist for me. You don't have to believe that. And here's the deal. In reality, an intelligent, educated, thinking person, why on earth would you believe in something you had not personally experienced? That's just not intelligent. So I smile at them and I say, if you were to have an experience like I've had, and you chose to believe, then you would be believing. But it doesn't matter to me if you do or you don't. So really what I would suggest, anytime you come across someone like me, and you guys are going to come across many, many, many in the coming months like me. Open your heart and open your mind, but don't let someone tell you what to believe. And don't believe something just because it's what everybody else believed or because your parents believed it. Believe it because it sets your heart on fire. And it's okay to change what you believe. I think those are big theories, and I know we talked about it a little because I'm running off with it, but I felt like it needed to be said right then.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think it's so important, and to recognize that we grow throughout our entire lifetimes. You know, we're constantly growing and learning and changing and evolving as human beings, and so we evolve spiritually as well, and being skeptical, even being atheistic or agnostic is part of our growth process, part of the stages we go through as we're growing. And so
well, you know, I got to jump in there real quick.
Different places at different times. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really, instead of growth there, I would say contrast, because it is only when we've known the light that we can recognize the dark, or vice versa. It's only when we've been up that we know we're down. You know, so there's all these, you know, night and day, rain and sun. You know, we have all these contrasts here in this human experience. It's when we notice those contrasts that we can say, I believe this or I believe that. And belief is very individual, despite what traditional religion would have you believe, or even atheism. Atheism is a religion. You know, at the end of the day, it's a belief system. Good. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Believe it. Wallow around in it. I told my children when they were young, I never once taught them about anything spiritual at all. And I remember saying to them, look, I don't care what you believe, but I want one thing, only one. I want to know why you believe it. That's it. And we're talking when they were very little. And each of them came to their own spirituality on their own. They didn't need me to tell them what I believed. They needed to experience it for themselves. And I think that that's a very big key. It's the contrast. It's the holes in the lace. My brother once said, we're all musicians. He's just such a gifted. Jim is an amazing artist, an amazing musician. And he said, I was writing a song for my album, and he said, Jamie, it is the pause between notes. It's the silence between notes that defines the music. Pay attention to your silences. And isn't life the same?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It changed me when he said that. Like the lace. You know, it's the holes that define the lace.
Yes.
Embrace your holes. Embrace your silence. Embrace the parts of you that are so imperfect, because only then can you notice the incredible you that's sitting right in front of you. You are enough. And you don't have to change anything. You don't have to try. You don't have to make it happen. Just sit back and smile and say, all right, bring it on, universe. Whatever you believe, bring it on. And you will be amazed what will happen in your life. And I want to commend you, by the way, because it is a hard thing to, first of all, deal with these topics publicly. And it's also very, very courageous in the medical community to be willing to say, look, I may not have all the answers. I'm going to approach this from a standpoint of all systems. And I love that you're doing that. And I just wanted to say, well done. You know, it doesn't matter what you believe or what anybody else believes. You're offering an unbiased opinion, which I think is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, because it does take some courage, you know, when you're part of a profession and part of really an institution and a system, to step out from it and say, okay, this is how I see it. This is what I've learned. This is what's come to me, and this is how I see it. And it might be different than the way other people see it, but I have to have the courage.
But what is medicine? I mean, I am a physical healer, but I work hand in hand with physicians and nurses and practitioners because I believe in medicine. I believe that it's here for a reason. These are healers. They may not know it, but they were drawn to this profession for a reason. And it's because within them is this beautiful spark that says, I want to be an instrument. Do you think a doctor, a surgeon with a scalpel in an ER or an OR working on a human heart is any less a healer than a Reiki master or a and I use less on purpose, by the way, because they may not see themselves that way, but we do. Mm-hmm. That scalpel is being guided, even if it's just by that one person's will to say, I want to help, I want to love, and I want this person to get better. I don't think there are any doctors that say, boy, I hope this guy dies. It's not happening.
No.
They're standing there going, what can I do today to save a life? And that is beautiful. So anybody that's listening, you don't have to believe in life after death. You don't have to believe in anything outside of you, but definitely look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, well done. You are a healer. We all are.
And that's really beautiful, because that's the kind of message I want to come across through this series, is that each one of us just needs to look at our own experiences and what life has brought us and learn what we can from it, and keep moving on our own journey, and know that there will be more lessons, there will be more things for us to learn, and we each are just doing the best we can wherever we are.
A good friend of mine this week said his friend Val, and I apologize, I can't remember his last name, but he used to be good friends with Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, that whole amazing group. And my friend Monty said, Val used to get up. He's passed like 20 years ago. But he used to get up and he'd say, let's all stretch. He's a great speaker. And they would all stretch. And he'd say, let's sing a song. And he said, Val was a terrible singer, but he'd sing, row, row, row your boat. And everybody would join in gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And as I heard him say that, of course, I stopped and listened to the lyrics. And I'd never thought about it before. Row, row, row your boat. Okay, so let's apply that to life. I am my boat, because I can only do what for me. I can't do anything in anybody else's boat. It's my boat. Gently down the stream. So we know that those that are into the law of attraction, that we're not supposed to paddle upstream and all that. We're supposed to let the beautiful current carry us. But you know what? When you're rowing a boat gently down the stream, what you're actually doing is saying, oh, I want that experience. Oh, I don't want that one. Let's go around that boulder. Oh, this is good. But I'm still allowing the stream to do all the hard, heavy lifting, right? Merrily, 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 full of joy. Life is meant to be lived full of joy. Always return to joy in everything. Life is but a dream. And in my world, life should be a dream. When we go in and we sleep and we have these amazing adventures, why is it we can fly in our dreams, but we can't hear unless we get in an airplane? Partially, I think, because we don't believe we can, and I mean that metaphorically. Look out at your life and say, what is my dream? It is a dream. You're supposed to grab them. And that's what grief really taught me is, Evan had money in the bank, and he didn't spend it. He often wouldn't give himself something he wanted, or he would go to work on days when he wanted to stay home because he just said, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And that later never came at 46 years old. My later, you better believe it's coming. And I'm going to embrace it, and I'm eating dessert first as soon as I get this 20 pounds off.
Well, I think that's a really beautiful reminder and a beautiful way for us to even bring our conversation to a close, too. That really all of this, if we look at grief and loss and the suffering that we have in life, it's really part of our path and part of our learning experience in life. And it is meant to, as you and I both expressed, even within the deepest pain, there's still joy. There's still the capacity to feel joy and see beauty and experience love. And so we're meant to take all of it in, all of it at once.
To add one last thing to that, as you were talking, I saw simply extremes. So in other words, we talked a minute ago about contrast. If you have never experienced intense, undeniable agony, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, in any way, you probably have never truly experienced the opposite, which is elation, joy, true freedom, true feelings of I am. I'm looking down and I borrowed Paul Selig's amazing book, I Am the Word, from Mitchell. And I was actually looking at it. They're directing me here in closing. I was looking at it as we were making the call today before we called. And Mitchell often says this, but, and it's not about religion. It's about the belief that we are all connected and that we're here for a reason, even if that reason is just for us, for people that don't believe there's more. Live every minute as though it is your last. And it says, I am Word. Through all that I see before me, Word, I am Word. I am Word. through the knowing that I need to understand, to receive, to know the intentions that I must set to serve my highest good and greatest growth. I am learning. I am learning. I am learning. And that is such amazing, those are such amazing words to live by. You know, you're going to have pain. You're going to get hurt. You're going to die. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it. They don't. It's like incontinence. Nobody wants to talk about it. You know, it's like this exists. And do you realize, it just dawned on me what they're trying to say right now. It is our grief and our pain that lets us know that we are all the same. Do you know that? That's the one thing that brings us all back. Love, and the opposite of love, of course, pain, brings us back to that belief that no matter what office you hold, no matter how beautiful you are or how homely you are or fat, skinny, you know, all the things we think we are all the same carbon-based life form. And that I think brings us together. I think it unifies us. I'm so glad we did this because now I'm all excited about that.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited that we did this. And I want to let people listening in know how they can connect with you, Jamie. So one way is through the Cosmic Caffeine radio show, which they can find at Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah, they can just two ways. They can go to Blog Talk Radio. It's blogtalkradio.com/Cosmic Caffeine, or just CosmicCaffeine.com if it's hard for you to remember that one. And that's every Sunday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Most Sundays, pretty much all.
Okay. And it's a great show, always a lot of fun to listen to. And then your website is jamiethepsychic.com. Facebook is a great way to connect with you.
It really is. I mean, it's kind of my little office is what I call it, and that's just facebook.com/Jamie the Psychic. I got stuck with that in radio. Let me correct you. I did not pick that. That was just the first time I did radio in 2010. I was on 104.1 in Orlando, and there was certain events that happened. And they started calling me. Oh, you mean the Psychic? Yeah, Jamie. The Psychic, yeah, Jamie, the Psychic, Jamie the Psychic. And suddenly they're calling me Jamie the Psychic, and I want to scream, no, because I'm so different than that. But you know what? I believe that people are afraid of that word, and they think that psychics are somehow from some horrible negative entity. Couldn't be further from the truth. I am absolutely operating from love, God, source, you know, life, and all I want to do is walk my path, and if that means helping someone, that's great. I do private readings every week. My assistant, Gina, who actually is also my daughter, is at info@jamiethepsychic.com. And then on Facebook, I take questions and answers. Now, this one's tricky because you can ask a question in the messages. That's all that inbox is for. Don't write me letters in there. And randomly, I choose one every day, every other day, and I answer it on my wall. So it's just my way of giving back. The radio show also, we take live callers. And we don't actually let people anymore tell us why they called. Did I tell you that? Now we tell them why they called. Yeah, we started in May, and so far we're 100%. We've gotten it right on every single caller. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's me. And, you know, I know that in the near future I'm being told that I will be doing more television, which I'm fine with, and life is but a dream. You know, it's supposed to be fun.
Well, Jamie, it's so much fun to talk to you, and it's just been really fun to be on this journey together, both of us looking at grief from our own perspectives and our own life experiences, and then finding so much common ground between us, even though, you know, really our life paths have been very different in so many ways. And yet we share such common ground, and it's really beautiful to be able to talk about it and present it to other people and offer it to them. If it's if it's helpful, that's even more beautiful. So
absolutely, and it's their choice. You know, you can say, "Hey, would you like a cookie?" I'm just giving you a cookie. And the person says, no, I'm allergic to cookies, or no, I don't like cookies, or oh my gosh, I've been wanting a cookie for months. Thank you so much. I'm just offering, and so are you. And that's really where it ends, is here's the offering. What someone does with it is totally their decision. And it's the tie that binds, you know, is that we're offering. And grief and loss is the tie that binds us, and love. I have to say, I have to put love in there too. And so this, I can't wait to hear the whole series. I think it's amazing. let's talk about the elephant in the room. Death sucks, and it's fantastic because it brings us to where we're supposed to be, and it is the elephant in the room.
Well, thank you for that. Thanks for being willing to talk about the elephant in the room. And,
I'm friends with Mom.
And Jamie, I appreciate you so much for taking time out. I know how busy you are, and I just appreciate you for being here with me and sharing this conversation and for all your openness and open-heartedness.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Until the next time we get to talk.
Yes, I adore you. Thank you.
Okay, same here. All right. Goodbye.